Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance, his hands gripping the metal railing as he stared at the view screen. The planet below was burning. New Geneva Colony had been home to 3 million people just 12 hours ago. Now, it was a graveyard of twisted metal and ash. "Sir, we're picking up survivor signals from Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the pain underneath. Amy had grown up on New Geneva before joining Earth Space Service. "Send down rescue teams immediately," Jake ordered. He turned to his communications officer. "Danny, get me a channel to Earth Command, Priority 1. The young officer nodded and began working at his console. Jake had been in space for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The Zephyrian raiders had come without warning. They had destroyed hospitals, schools, and civilian shelters. They had killed children and old people who had never held a weapon in their lives. For 200 years, Earth had been the galaxy's peacemaker. When the Krathri Empire fought with the Vorthic clans, humans stepped in to negotiate. When trade disputes arose between distant worlds, Earth's diplomats found solutions. Humanity had earned respect across the galaxy for their ability to end conflicts with words instead of weapons. Jake remembered his training at the academy. His instructors had taught him that violence was always the last option. Earth's strength came from its moral authority, not its military power. The galaxy trusted humans because they always chose peace over war. But as Jake watched the rescue teams pull bodies from the wreckage, something cold settled in his chest. The Zephyrians had laughed at human diplomatic protests. They had called humans weak and promised more attacks unless Earth surrendered its outer colonies. "Captain Morrison, I have Earth Command on the line," Danny announced. "Put them through," Jake said. Admiral Lisa Harper's face appeared on the screen. She had been Earth's chief negotiator for 20 years. Jake had always admired her ability to find peaceful solutions to impossible problems. But today, something was different in her eyes. "Jake, I need a full report on the situation," she said. 3 million civilians dead, Admiral. The Zephyrians hit every major city with plasma bombs. They targeted schools and hospitals specifically. "We're still finding survivors, but the numbers are bad." Lisa's face remained calm, but Jake saw her hands clench into fists. "Any military targets?" "No, ma'am." This was pure terrorism. They wanted to send a message. "They sent one," Lisa said quietly. "Just not the one they intended." The communication ended, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. He had never heard that tone in the Admiral's voice before. It reminded him of something from the history books he had read as a child. Stories about ancient Earth when humans fought each other in terrible wars. 3 decks below, Commander Alex Stone received a message that would change everything. Alex led Earth's Special Operations Division, a small unit that handled rescue missions and anti-piracy operations. The message was coded with the highest security classification. Alex read it twice before believing what he was seeing. "Gloves off, show them what we learned from our own history." Alex stared at the words on his screen. For 2 centuries, Earth's military had focused on peacekeeping and humanitarian missions. They had weapons, but they were designed for defense and crowd control. The galaxy had never seen what humans were truly capable of when they stopped holding back. Alex began typing orders to his team leaders. They would need to access files that had been classified for generations. Combat techniques and strategies that Earth had hoped never to use again. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had chosen peace in the first place on Earth. President Kevin Walsh sat in the Oval Office, reading reports from across the galaxy. The Zephyrian attack was not an isolated incident. Other aggressive species were testing human resolve, launching small attacks on human trade ships and border colonies. They saw Earth's peaceful nature as weakness. Kevin's chief of staff, Susan Blake, entered the room carrying a thick folder. "Sir, the Joint Chiefs are ready to brief you on our response options." "How many people died on New Geneva, Susan?" 3 million confirmed, sir." "Maybe more when the final count is done," Kevin nodded slowly. He had spent his entire political career promoting peace and cooperation. Earth's constitution required him to exhaust all diplomatic options before considering military action. But the Zephyrians had made it clear that diplomacy was useless. "Set up the briefing," Kevin said. "And Susan, activate the War Powers Act." Susan's eyes widened. The War Powers Act had not been used in over a century. It gave the president authority to mobilize Earth's full military capacity without waiting for congressional approval. Across the galaxy, other species watched the human response with interest. The Krathri Empire had been planning their own attack on human shipping lanes. The Vorthek clan saw opportunity in human weakness. None of them understood what was coming. In the deepest levels of Earth's military headquarters, machines that had been silent for generations began to wake up. Production lines that had built hospitals and schools started retooling for a different purpose. Engineers pulled out blueprints that had been locked away since the end of Earth's last global war. Jake Morrison remained on the bridge of the Defiance, coordinating rescue operations, but he could feel something changing. Messages were flowing between Earth's scattered fleets. New orders were being prepared. The galaxy's peacemakers were about to remind everyone why they had chosen peace in the first place. The last message Jake received that day came from Admiral Harper herself. It was broadcast to every human ship in the galaxy. The message was simple, but it carried the weight of 2 centuries of restrained power. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Harper. Effective immediately, Earth withdraws from all peace treaties and mediation agreements. We will no longer negotiate with terrorists. We will no longer turn the other cheek." The galaxy wanted to see what happens when humans stop talking. Now they will learn. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had read about humanity's dark past in school, but it had always seemed like ancient history. Now it was becoming the future. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's commitment to peace had never been about inability to wage war. It had been about understanding its true cost. As the stars wheeled overhead, Jake Morrison and 3 billion other humans prepared to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. Dr. Susan Blake stood in her laboratory on Mars, studying the biological profiles of every known alien species in the galaxy. As Earth's leading expert on alien life, she understood better than most why humanity had chosen the path of peace. Humans were unique among all intelligent species. They were the only ones who had nearly destroyed themselves through warfare. Every other species in the galaxy had conquered their home planet through dominance and then expanded outward. The Krathari had wiped out all other intelligent life on their world through ritual combat. The Vorthak had enslaved their planet's weaker species before reaching the stars. The Zephyrians had evolved as apex predators with no natural enemies, but humans were different. They had fought themselves to the edge of extinction multiple times. World wars that killed millions, nuclear weapons that could destroy entire continents, chemical weapons that poisoned the air itself. Humanity had learned to cooperate not through strength, but through the bitter knowledge of what happened when they did not. Susan's computer chimed with an incoming message. It was from President Kevin Walsh, marked with the highest security. Classification. She opened it and felt her blood run cold. "Dr. Blake, report to the Pentagon immediately. Bring all files on alien combat capabilities and weaknesses. The gloves are coming off." Susan had spent her career hoping this day would never come. She had studied alien species to help humans understand them better, to find peaceful solutions to conflicts. Now her research would be used for a very different purpose. 3 hours later, Susan sat in a conference room deep beneath the Pentagon. Around the table were Earth's most powerful military leaders, people she had only seen on news broadcasts. General Patricia Moore, head of Earth's dormant military system, was speaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Zephyrian attack on New Geneva was not an isolated incident. Our intelligence shows that 17 different species are planning attacks on human colonies. They see our peaceful nature as weakness." President Walsh leaned forward. "General, what are our current military capabilities?" "Limited, sir." "We have peacekeeping forces and defensive systems, but nothing designed for offensive operations. Our shipyards build hospital ships and rescue vessels. Our soldiers train for crowd control and disaster relief. How long would it take to change that? General Moore smiled grimly. Sir, we never actually got rid of our weapons. We just put them in storage. Earth's military-industrial complex has been on standby for 2 centuries. We can have war production, running within 72 hours. Susan watched the faces around the table. These people were talking about war like it was just another policy option, but she had studied humanity's history. She knew what humans were capable of when they stopped holding back. What about personnel? Asked Admiral Harper, who had just arrived from the Space Fleet. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Scott opened a thick folder. We have detailed records of every conflict in human history. Tactics, strategies, and combat techniques from every major war. Most importantly, we have something no other species possesses, which is experience fighting opponents who are exactly as intelligent as we are. Every other species in the galaxy evolved to dominate less intelligent creatures. Humans evolved to fight other humans. We spent millions of years learning to outthink, outmaneuver, and outfight enemies who were just as smart as we were. Susan felt sick. She had never thought about it that way, but Ryan was right. Her research showed that most alien species had simple, direct combat styles. They relied on superior strength, numbers, or technology. They had never needed to develop complex strategies because they had never faced truly equal opponents. Dr. Blake, President Walsh said, we need to know everything about alien combat capabilities. Strengths, weaknesses, psychological profiles. Can you provide that information? Susan nodded slowly. Yes, sir, but I need to warn you about something. The galaxy sees us as peaceful mediators. If we suddenly become aggressive, it will shock them. They have no idea what we are capable of. Good, said General Moore. Shock is a weapon, too. Over the next week, Susan watched Earth transform. Factories that had built medical equipment began producing weapons. Shipyards that had constructed rescue vessels started building warships. The designs were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Marine Captain Nicole Parker received orders to begin training programs, using tactics from humanity's bloodiest conflicts. She pulled out manuals from World War II, Vietnam, and the urban wars of the 21st century. Strategies that had been developed to fight human opponents were adapted for use against aliens. The enemy expects honorable combat, Nicole told her recruits. They fight with ritual and ceremony. We fight to win. We use deception, surprise, and psychological warfare. We hit them where they do not expect it, when they do not expect it. The recruits were young humans who had grown up in a peaceful galaxy. They had never seen real war. But as Nicole taught them the lessons of human history, something awakened in them. An ancient instinct that had been sleeping for generations. Meanwhile, in Earth's Intelligence Division, Commander Tony Miller was studying alien military tactics. What he found was both encouraging and terrifying. The galaxy's most feared warriors fought like ancient humans. They used direct attacks, massed formations, and individual combat. They had no concept of modern warfare. They fight like it is still the Middle Ages, Tony reported to his superiors. They have advanced weapons, but they use them in primitive ways. They have never faced an opponent who uses electronic warfare, coordinated strikes, or deception tactics. The transformation was not limited to Earth. On human colonies throughout the galaxy, people were receiving new orders. Colony governors who had focused on farming and trade were suddenly organizing militias. Scientists who had studied alien cultures were reassigned to intelligence gathering. Captain Jake Morrison, still coordinating rescue operations at New Geneva, received new orders. The Defiance was being recalled to Earth for refit. When it returned to space, it would be carrying weapons the galaxy had never seen. Sir, reported Lieutenant Amy Foster, we are receiving reports from human colonies across the galaxy. The Krathri Empire is mobilizing its fleets. The Vorthek clans are moving toward human space. It looks like they are planning a coordinated attack. Jake smiled coldly. Let them come. They think they are attacking the same humans who have been mediating their disputes for 2 centuries. They are about to learn that those humans are gone. As the rescue operations at New Geneva continued, Jake found himself looking forward to the coming conflict. For the first time in generations, humanity would show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The age of human diplomacy was ending. The age of human dominance was about to begin. The galaxy had lived in peace for 2 centuries because humanity had chosen to enforce that peace through negotiation and compromise. Now they would learn what happened when humans chose to enforce peace through strength. The lesson would be written in the wreckage of alien fleets and the surrender of alien governments. Humanity was about to remind the galaxy why they had chosen peace in the first place. The Zephyrian High Command expected humanity's response to be weak. Perhaps a small attack on one of their border stations, followed by desperate calls for peace talks. They had never fought a species that understood total war. Admiral Jake Morrison's fleet arrived at the Zephyrian border 3 weeks after the New Geneva massacre. His ships looked different now. Gone were the white hulls and red crosses of peacekeeping vessels. The new human warships were dark gray, built for stealth and destruction. "Sir, we have visual contact with the Zephyrian Defense Fleet," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster. 47 ships in standard formation. Jake studied the enemy formation on his screen. The Zephyrians had arranged their ships in a perfect circle, each vessel facing outward. It was a defensive pattern that had worked for them for centuries. It would not work today. "Signal the fleet," Jake ordered. "Execute Plan Omega." The human ships seemed to scatter in all directions. To the Zephyrians, it looked like the humans were retreating in panic. They had no way of knowing that every human ship was moving to a carefully planned position. Colonel Danny Wright led the ground assault teams aboard the human ships. His soldiers carried weapons that looked simple but were devastatingly effective. While the Zephyrians prepared for space combat, Danny's teams were already on their way to the planet's surface. "Remember your training," Danny told his troops over the comm system. "The enemy expects us to fight like they do. Direct attacks, honor duels, mass charges, we fight smart. We hit their command centers, their communications, their supply lines. Make them blind and deaf before they know we are there." The first phase of the attack began at exactly 0400 local time. Human infiltration teams had been on the planet for days, invisible to Zephyrian sensors. They struck simultaneously at power plants, communication towers, and military headquarters across the planet. The Zephyrians woke up to find their world in chaos. Their computers were down. Their communications were jammed. Their military leaders were trapped in bunkers that had been sealed from the outside. They had no idea what was happening in space. The Zephyrian fleet finally realized that the scattered human ships were not retreating. They were surrounding them. When the humans attacked, it was with a coordination that the Zephyrians had never seen. "Fire at will," Jake ordered. The human ships opened fire from 12 different angles at once. The Zephyrians tried to respond, but their circular formation was designed to fight enemies who attacked from one direction. They could not defend against attacks coming from everywhere at once. Captain Steve Johnson commanded one of the human attack squadrons. His ships used electronic warfare to confuse Zephyrian sensors. The aliens found themselves firing at ghosts while real human ships attacked from unexpected angles. "Target their command ship," Steve ordered his weapons officer. "Take out their ability to coordinate." The Zephyrian flagship exploded in a ball of flame. Without central command, the alien fleet fell into chaos. Individual ships tried to fight on their own, but they had no experience with independent action. They had always relied on orders from above. The Battle of Zephyr Prime lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the entire Zephyrian defense fleet had been destroyed or captured. Not a single human ship had been lost. On the planet's surface, Colonel Danny Wright's assault teams had captured every major military installation. They had done it without destroying a single civilian building. The Zephyrians had prepared for the kind of warfare they understood, where armies met in open battle. They were not prepared for human tactics. "Sir, we have control of the planetary Government Center, Danny reported to Admiral Morrison. The Zephyrian leadership is requesting surrender terms. Tell them there are no terms, Jake replied. They surrender unconditionally or we continue the assault? The speed of the human victory shocked the galaxy. The Zephyrians had been considered one of the most powerful military forces in known space. They had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved millions of beings. The idea that they could be defeated so easily was impossible to believe, but the news got worse for the galaxy's aggressive species. The Krathri Empire, emboldened by what they thought was human weakness, launched their own attack on Earth's trade routes. They sent their most elite battle fleet to destroy human cargo ships near the Centauri system. Captain Amy Foster had been promoted to fleet command after the Zephyrian victory. She was waiting for them with a force of 30 human warships. The Krathri fleet numbered over 200 vessels, but Amy was not worried about the numbers. Sir, the Krathri fleet is moving into attack formation, reported her tactical officer. They are requesting single combat between champions. Amy almost laughed. The Krathri still thought this was about honor and personal glory. They had no idea they were about to face the kind of warfare that had nearly destroyed humanity centuries ago. Ignore their request, Amy ordered. Begin electronic warfare protocols. I want them blind and confused before we engage. The Krathri fleet advanced in perfect formation, each ship in its proper place according to ancient battle traditions. They were magnificent to watch, like a deadly ballet in space. It was also exactly what the humans had expected, Commander. Tony Miller's intelligence reports had been accurate. The Krathri fought like medieval knights with honor codes and ritual combat. They had never faced an enemy who used deception and coordinated strikes. The human ships split into small groups and attacked from multiple directions. They used jamming devices to confuse Krathri sensors. They fired weapons that the aliens had never seen before. Most importantly, they fought as a unified force instead of individual heroes. Their formation is breaking, reported Amy's tactical officer. They do not know how to respond to multiple attack vectors. Continue the assault, Amy ordered. Target their command vessels first. The Battle of Centauri lasted only 3 hours. When it ended, the entire Krathri fleet had been destroyed. Not a single human ship was even damaged. The survivors fled back to their empire with stories of human tactical brilliance that seemed impossible. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than light. Species that had been planning attacks on human colonies suddenly found excuses to delay their operations. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's peaceful nature had been a choice, not a weakness. In the intelligence centers of every major alien government, analysts were studying the human victories with growing alarm. The humans had not just won through superior technology, they had won through superior thinking. They fought like no other species in the galaxy. The age of human diplomacy was over. The age of human dominance had begun. The Vorthic Empire had watched the destruction of the Zephyrian and Krathri fleets with growing concern. Emperor Thaxmor decided that humanity needed to be crushed before they became too powerful. He assembled the largest military force in galactic history to assault Earth's industrial colonies. 10,000 warships gathered at the edge of Vorthic space. The fleet was so massive that it took 3 days just to count all the vessels. Emperor Thaxmor commanded from his flagship, a battle cruiser the size of a small moon. He was confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm any human defenses. The humans have won 2 small battles, the Emperor told his war council. They think they understand warfare. We will show them what real military power looks like. The Vorthak fleet began its advance toward human space. Their target was the Kepler system, where Earth maintained its largest industrial colonies. The factories there produced everything from starship engines to medical supplies. Destroying them would cripple humanity's ability to maintain their new military forces. Admiral Patricia Moore had been expecting this attack. Human intelligence had been tracking Vorthic fleet movements for weeks. She knew they would come in massive numbers, relying on their traditional tactics of overwhelming force. Sir, our scouts report the Vorthak fleet is 3 days out, reported her communications officer. Intelligence estimates 10,000 ships, possibly more. Patricia smiled grimly. She had spent months studying every battle in human history, looking for lessons that could be applied to space warfare. The answer had come from an ancient Earth battle called Thermopylae, where a small force had held off a massive army by choosing the right battlefield. Begin Phase 1, Patricia ordered. All ships to the asteroid field. The Kepler system contained one of the galaxy's largest asteroid fields. Thousands of space rocks drifted in a complex pattern that had taken centuries to map. Most species avoided the area because it was too dangerous for large fleets to navigate. Captain Steve Johnson commanded the advanced scouts whose job was to make the Vorthak fleet think they were winning. His ships appeared at the edge of the system, fired a few shots at the approaching enemy, then retreated toward the asteroid field. They are taking the bait, Steve reported to Admiral Moore. The Vorthak are pursuing at full speed. Emperor Thaxmore watched the fleeing human ships with satisfaction. The humans were running scared, just as he had expected. His massive fleet followed them into the asteroid field, confident that their numbers would carry the day. Maintain pursuit, the Emperor ordered. Do not let them escape. What the Vorthak did not know was that human ships had been hiding in the asteroid field for weeks. Admiral Moore had positioned her forces using tactics learned from submarine warfare in Earth's ancient oceans. They waited silently among the space rocks. Invisible to enemy sensors, the Vorthak fleet stretched out in a long line as they pursued the retreating humans. Their formation was perfect for open space combat, but it was exactly what Patricia had hoped for. The enemy was strung out like beads on a string, unable to support each other quickly. Now, Patricia whispered into her cum-unit. Human ships emerged from hiding places throughout the asteroid field. They had been waiting in the shadows of space rocks, their engines cold and their weapons powered down. Now they came alive like deadly ghosts. The Vorthak fleet found itself under attack from every direction at once. Ships that had been invisible suddenly appeared beside them, firing at point-blank range. The asteroids that had seemed like obstacles became weapons as human ships used them for cover. Captain Amy Foster led one of the attack squadrons. Her ships had been hiding behind a cluster of large asteroids near the center of the field. When the Vorthak fleet passed by, she struck at their command vessels. Target their flagship, Amy ordered. Take out their ability to coordinate. The human attack was devastating. The Vorthak had expected to fight in open space, where their numbers would matter. Instead, they were trapped in a maze of asteroids, fighting enemies who appeared and disappeared. Like phantoms, Commander Tony Miller's intelligence reports had been perfect. The Vorthak fought in rigid formations that worked well in open space, but became death traps in the asteroid field. They could not maneuver properly, and their massive ships became easy targets. Sir, we have destroyed over 3,000 enemy vessels, reported Patricia's tactical officer. They are trying to retreat, but the asteroid field is slowing them down. Continue the assault, Patricia ordered. Show no mercy. The Battle of Kepler became a massacre. The Vorthak fleet was too large to maneuver effectively in the asteroid field. Human ships darted in and out of the space rocks, striking at will and then disappearing before the enemy could respond. Emperor Thaxmore watched his mighty fleet being destroyed piece by piece. His 10,000 ships were being defeated by a force less than 1/10 their size. It was impossible, but it was happening. How are they doing this? He demanded from his war council. Sir, they are using the asteroids as cover, reported his tactical officer. Our ships are too large to maneuver effectively. The humans are smaller and faster. Then we retreat, the Emperor decided. Signal the fleet to withdraw. But retreating from the asteroid field was harder than entering it. The Vorthak ships had to move slowly to avoid collisions with space rocks. The humans continued their attacks, picking off enemy vessels one by one. When the battle ended, 9,000 Vorthak ships had been destroyed or captured. Only a few hundred survivors managed to escape back to their empire. The human fleet had lost less than 50 vessels. The survivors who reached Vorthix space brought tales of human tactical brilliance that seemed like magic. They spoke of ships that appeared from nowhere, of attacks that came from impossible angles, of coordination that seemed almost supernatural. The news of the Battle of Kepler spread across the galaxy within hours. The Vorthix Empire, which had been the most feared military force in known space, had been crushed by a human fleet. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted completely. In the intelligence centers of every major alien government, military leaders were studying the human victories with growing fear. The humans had not just won through superior technology or numbers, they had won through superior thinking. They fought like no other species in the galaxy had ever fought. Dr. Susan Blake's research had been proven correct. Humanity was unique among intelligent species because they had evolved to fight other humans. Every other species had conquered weaker opponents on their homeworlds. Only humans had spent millions of years learning to defeat enemies who were exactly as smart as they were. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's peaceful nature had been a gift, not a weakness. When Earth abandoned peace, the galaxy finally understood what war truly meant. And that understanding would change everything. 6 months after the Zephyrian attack on New Geneva, the galaxy looked completely different. The Galactic Council chamber, once filled with proud alien ambassadors who argued and threatened each other, was now silent except for the sound of human footsteps. Ambassador Lisa Harper walked into the chamber wearing the dark blue uniform of Earth's new diplomatic corps. The other species representatives sat quietly in their seats, no longer the aggressive politicians who had once dominated galactic affairs. They were survivors of a new age. "The council will come to order," Lisa announced. Her voice carried an authority that had never been there during her years as a mediator. She was no longer asking for cooperation, she was giving orders. "First item of business," Lisa continued, "the Zephyrian reparations. The former Zephyrian government will transfer 1 trillion credits to the New Geneva Memorial Fund. They will also provide labor for the reconstruction of all damaged colonies." The Zephyrian representative, now little more than a regional governor, under human oversight, nodded quickly. "Yes, Ambassador Harper, the payments have already begun." Lisa looked around the chamber. Every alien face showed the same expression of quiet fear. These were species that had once conquered star systems and enslaved entire worlds. Now they waited for human approval before making any major decisions. President Kevin Walsh had addressed the galaxy 3 months earlier in a speech that became known as the New Covenant. The message had been simple but revolutionary. Humanity would no longer serve as neutral peacekeepers. Instead, they would enforce peace through strength. "Any species that attacks civilian populations will face total warfare," Kevin had said during the broadcast. "Any government that threatens human interests will be removed. The galaxy will have peace, but it will be peace under human authority." The transformation had been swift and complete. Commander Alex Stone's Special Operations Division had become the galaxy's most feared military force. Their black ships appeared in star systems where conflicts threatened to break out. Usually their mere presence was enough to end fighting. That had lasted for years. The Krathri Empire had been the first to test the new order. 3 weeks after the Battle of Kepler, they had attacked a neutral trading station in the border systems. Alex's response had been immediate and overwhelming. "Sir, Krathri forces have occupied Trading Station Alpha 7, his intelligence officer had reported. "How many civilians?" Alex had asked. "Approximately 50,000, sir. Mixed species, mostly traders and their families." Alex had launched his assault within hours. His ships appeared around the trading station like deadly shadows. The Krathri occupation force had surrendered without firing a shot. They had heard what happened to those who fought against humans. The station was liberated within 6 hours. The Krathri commanders were transported to Earth for trial. The Krathri government issued a formal apology and agreed to pay damages to every affected family. Captain Jake Morrison, now Fleet Admiral of Earth Space Forces, commanded the largest Navy and Galactic History. Human shipyards worked around the clock, producing vessels that incorporated lessons learned from every conflict in human history. The ships were faster, smarter, and more deadly than anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Sir, we have reports of pirate activity in the Outer Rim," reported his communications officer during a routine briefing. "Which species?" Jake asked. "Mixed groups, sir." "Mostly refugees from the Vorthak territories," Jake nodded. The collapse of the Vorthak Empire had created chaos in the outer systems. Desperate survivors had turned to piracy and raiding. It was exactly the kind of problem that human forces were designed to handle. "Deploy Task Force 7, Jake ordered. "Standard anti-piracy protocols. Capture if possible, destroy if necessary." The pirates were dealt with within a week. Those who surrendered were given jobs in human reconstruction projects. Those who resisted were eliminated with clinical efficiency. The message was clear. Crime would not be tolerated in the new order. Dr. Susan Blake had published her final report on the human transformation 6 months after it began. Her conclusions were both disturbing and hopeful. The galaxy had achieved unprecedented peace and prosperity under human rule. Trade flowed freely under human protection. Scientific advancement accelerated with human coordination. Colonial expansion proceeded under human oversight. "We taught them war so they could learn peace," Susan wrote in her conclusion. Perhaps that was always the plan. The irony was not lost on the galaxy's historians. Humanity had brought peace through the threat of total war. They had ended conflicts by demonstrating their ability to wage them more effectively than anyone else. The Zephyrians, who had triggered humanity's transformation, now lived on a single planet under permanent human supervision. Their former empire had been divided among species that had suffered under their rule. They were forbidden from maintaining military forces or leaving their home system without human permission. Captain Amy Foster, now in charge of colonial security, regularly visited the former Zephyrian territories. The planets that had once been ruled by fear and violence were now peaceful and prosperous. Children who had grown up as slaves were now attending schools built by human engineers. "It is strange," Amy told her second-in-command during one of these visits. "We had to become warriors to create peace." The transformation was not limited to military affairs. Human culture had spread throughout the galaxy. Alien species learned human languages, adopted human legal systems, and followed human ethical standards. It was not forced upon them. They chose it because they saw how well it worked. The old Galactic Council had been replaced by the Terran colonial authority. Humans made the major decisions, but they included alien representatives in local governance. Species that proved themselves trustworthy were given more autonomy. Those that caused trouble found themselves under direct human administration. Commander Tony Miller's intelligence networks now covered every inhabited world in the galaxy. His agents watched for signs of rebellion or aggression. But mostly, they found grateful populations who appreciated the stability that human rule provided. 1 year after the attack on New Geneva, Admiral Lisa Harper stood before a memorial wall containing the names of the 3 million dead. The wall was made of black stone taken from the Zephyrian homeworld. Each name was carved in perfect letters that would last forever. "You did not die in vain," Lisa said quietly to the memorial. "Your sacrifice changed the galaxy." The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest gift to civilization had not been their technology or their diplomacy, but their restraint. When Earth abandoned peace, the galaxy finally understood what war truly meant. And in that understanding, they found a deeper peace than they had ever known before. The age of human dominance had begun, and it would last for 1,000 years.